Reading from a script is great when you're first getting started making calls. It helps you to build confidence. It helps you to build the repetition. It helps you to build the habit of being on the phone. But eventually, we want to get away from the script. We want to start using a sales process so we keep control of the sales process throughout. Sellers, they love taking control of the sales process. That's what they're designed to do. That's what we've been inbred in since we were younger. Us as real estate investors, as wholesalers, we want to control the process. So having a system, having a process through the sales cycle helps us to keep control of the calls. I'm Nathaniel Hovsepian. I have bought and sold millions of dollars of real estate in my career, from wholesaling, flipping, to buying and holding properties different ways creatively. I would love to share with you some of the tips and tricks that I've learned along the way. Here is a 7-step sales process from the book, You Can't Teach a Kid How to Ride a Bike at a Seminar. We're going to be going through the Sandler Submarine. This is the Sandler Submarine. Look at it, memorize it, get to know it. You know what I did when I first started is I made a whiteboard with it on there. I don't know if you can see that. My background might blur it, but I took this whiteboard, I drew the Sandler Submarine on here, and I drew a bunch of questions on here so I could keep track of where I was in the call. Now, we're going to go through each compartment here and go over this together, and I'm going to give you some great questions in each compartment. If you are interested in learning more, if you want to dive deeper into this, I do host a weekly Zoom on Thursdays called Helping Hands Hour, where I would love to dive further into this with you guys. The Sandler Submarine, we're going to start from the left side, bonding and rapport, and we're going to slowly move through it, not moving into the next compartments with exception to the first two, which will kind of bounce back and forth between until we've closed that compartment up and we feel like we're ready to move on to the next apartment. This is a submarine. Imagine that the front compartment gets a hole in it. You cannot move into the next compartment until you've closed that leak up. I think I said that right. Be patient. Okay, we don't have to do this all in one call. The great thing about this is when we set our upfront contract, we'll get into here in a second, is we can take our time, trust the process, trust the sales cycle. When we build that rapport and we bond with the seller, it's our deal to win. So this moves us into the bonding and rapport section. We're going to build rapport and we're going to bond with the seller through third-party stories. We do that. We build credibility by telling third-party stories. Think, oh, I just bought a house last week from Mrs. Johnson, who was in a very similar situation to you. You will develop these skills over time, being able to tell third-party stories that are relatable to the situation that your current seller is in. By telling third-party stories, we build credibility that, hey, we are doing this. We are actually a real estate investor. And you don't have to actually have ever bought a house before. That's the great thing about third-party stories. I would love to share some of those third-party stories and some of the structures with you as well as you go along and you get into your journey. This is the one compartment that you can move throughout the sales process. We are always building rapport. We're always bonding with the seller. And again, we do that by staying on topic, giving ourselves credibility by staying on the task at hand, which is we're talking about the property. A lot of times, especially when you're getting started out, when we don't have a sales process, we let the seller control the conversation, and we'll end up talking about the seller's dog, the seller's daughter who's graduating from college, anything and everything in between. Trust me, I've been there. We want to stay on topic. It's great to chat about the shoes that the seller just bought, just for very briefly, and then let's move it back to, hey, what's going on with the property? What's going on with this situation? Here's some great questions for bonding and rapport that you can steal right from the slide. And like I said, there are lots of other questions that you can ask that will build rapport and bond with your seller. Catch me up to speed. We want to say this right at the beginning of the call. This is especially great if you have somebody that's cold calling for you, if they filled out a form online, if you already have some information. You can say, hey, you talked with my colleague David about this property. He mentioned a couple things. Would you just catch me up to speed where you're at in the sales process? I want to make sure I don't miss anything. Hey, I saw that you filled this form out online. Will you just catch me up to speed with where you're at right now? It's a great open-ended kind of question that allows the seller to talk. We want the seller talking, and we want to be asking questions. How have the other offers been coming in? This is an open-ended one where it allows the seller to kind of assume what you're asking the question. You might get, I've been getting $100,000 offers. The offers are way below where I'm asking. This allows you to follow on some questions. They might just say, hey, I've been getting them an email. Oh, okay. What do the emails look like? Anything that's sparked your interest, right? So we're just probing, opening up questions. What did your real estate agent say about this? We want to just assume that they have a real estate agent, right? Let's just assume things and let them tell us, no, no, no. I hate real estate agents. I would never sell with a real estate agent, right? Oh, why not? See, now we're asking some follow-on questions. We're really digging into some motivations, some digging into some problems. I'm jumping ahead into the submarine a little bit, but that's all right. Like I said, these first couple are going to go back and forth a little bit. I wanted to jump back. I kind of skipped along here on the how have the other offers been coming in question. I imagine you're getting a bunch of lowball offers from other knuckleheads. We're assuming that there are other people talking to the seller. We are not the only one. That's why it's our job to ask better questions, to get away from the script and build trust and build rapport with them. Let's move on to the next compartment. And that is the upfront contract. Again, the upfront contract moves in and out of these first two compartments. I know I mentioned at the top of this, let's close each compartment before we move on. But the upfront contract happens at the beginning and it happens at the bonding and rapport, and we even have a contract towards the end of this in the post-sell. Now, an upfront contract right at the beginning of the call could be, is now a good time to talk? Okay, that's allowing the seller to say, no, now's not a good time to talk, or giving you permission, yes, now's a good time to talk. If they say no, we're going to go, okay, when is a good time to talk? Let's put something on the book and I'm going to hold you to it, right? An upfront contract sets the tone for the call. It can set the tone for the follow-up calls as well. We'll get that into the decision phase. It lets the seller know what to expect from the call and what to expect from your sales process. And it is important for you to abide by the upfront contract. If you say, do you have 10 minutes so we can chat about this and see if we'd be a good fit? We could schedule another call. If 20 minutes go by and you haven't acknowledged that it's been longer than 10 minutes, you've lost some credibility with the seller. So we set an upfront contract. It's up to us to abide by it as well. So if I said, hey, do you have 10 minutes to talk about this property? When I'm paying attention to the time, when it's coming up on that 10-minute, or once we've passed the 10 minutes, hey, Mr. Seller, I said I just needed 10 minutes. It's now 11 minutes by. I want to make sure that I'm respectful of your time. Do you want to continue this call, or do you want to schedule a follow-up call with me? In the upfront contract phase, this is where we're going to start to find out about some other decision makers. So let's move on to some questions that we might be able to ask. Here's some questions in the upfront contract phase. Hey, John, we're just going to have a brief conversation. If I feel like I'm a good fit for you, if I'm a good resource for you, I would love to continue the conversation if you feel the same way. How does that sound? John, I imagine I'm going to just use John here. John, I imagine you're just as busy as I am. We only buy a couple houses a week. And so I need to make sure that I'm spending my time with the right individuals, the right people. If we find that we are a good fit, how quickly are you wanting to move forward? Okay. If they're saying, oh man, I'm not really interested in selling for 6 months. Hey, John, I'm going to follow up with you in a couple months. I've got other people that are really interested in selling within the next couple weeks. They might change their tune after you've said that. Okay. Who else do you typically rely on to make these types of big decisions? Okay, we're finding out other decision makers in this process. It could be a wife or husband. It could be a brother or sister, mom or dad, uncle, aunt, real estate agent, attorney. We want to find these things out now, because if we wait until later after we've gone through this whole sales process with them and they go, let me talk to my wife about it, dang, we should have had our wife on the call. We should have had the wife on the call the whole time. We should have looped them in at least sooner into the conversation. Okay, so this could go a couple different ways. They might say, I'm the only person that makes decisions in this household. Say, that's excellent. I just wanted to ask because I just got off the phone a little bit ago and I got an hour into the call after they said that they were the only decision maker. And he said, hey, let me talk to my wife about this. Man, what a waste of an hour of my time. I could have had the wife looped in the whole time. So as long as that's not the case here, let's continue going forward. If there's anybody else that we want to loop in, though, let's do that now so we can just get all the questions out and get all the questions answered, ahead of time. They might say, And then they might say, hey, these are the decision makers. I need to consult my attorney. What would your wife think about this? What would your attorney think about this? What would they be looking for to help you make this decision? Moving on to the next compartment, we have pain. No pain, no gain. Pain is synonymous with motivation. You might hear the 4 pillars as motivation, timeline, condition, and price. These are the structures. These are also all included here in the sales process, the 7 step system. So this is motivation. This is where we're going to be able to solve a problem for a seller. Okay, this is why sellers will sell at a discount, or they'll sell creatively, and they'll give us some terms or things like that. It's because there's a problem that we're solving. It is up to us to dig below the surface. A seller might just say something like, hey, the tenant's a problem. Okay, well, what's the problem with the tenant? Let's follow on. We don't want to just accept surface level pain, surface level problems. We want to dig deeper and really find what's truly going on under the surface. That's how we're going to get discounts on properties, and that's how we're going to get great terms if we're diving into creative financing. Here's some questions that are great to ask and great to dig out some pain when we're talking to the seller. It doesn't seem like you're really ready to sell this house right now. It seems like if you had this house for another year or so, it wouldn't be really a problem. You're either going to get, yep, I don't really care to sell this house. I was just calling to see what you would offer, or they're going to let you know a little bit more. What happens if you can't sell? What's the next step if this doesn't work out? Let's find out. Let the seller paint us a picture. Let the seller tell us what's really going on. John, since we haven't really been able to come up with a solution, before I hang up, though, I'm interested, what are you thinking of doing with this property? Let's let the seller talk. Let's let the seller give us some more pain, some more motivation, listening actively to what they're saying, and then trying to ask a follow-on question to dig a little bit deeper. Once we've closed up this pain, this is where we're bonding and rapport. This is a great place to add some extra third-party stories in. Oh man, I was talking to Mrs. Johnson last week. She had a tenant that was, causing some problems. They weren't paying. They were destroying the house. They had the cops called on them a couple times. She just really wanted to sell. She wanted to be done with this property. Are any of those ringing true to you? Let's add some third-party stories in. Let's really dial into the pain, dig into the pain, find out what the true motivation is under the surface before we move on to budget. Budget's where we're going to find out how ridiculous this seller is really asking for their property. Are they just looking at Zillow and going, hey, properties are selling for $300,000 around me that have all been fixed up, and their house needs, $120,000 worth of work? Are they even crazier than that? Are they asking for you to close tomorrow and give them a briefcase full of diamonds? Let's find out. When you find out a number from the seller, which we'll talk about some great questions to ask here in a second, we want to shut our mouths. We want the silence to be deafening. It doesn't matter if this number is an excellent one and it's one you want to jump on right away. We want to act like we are just taken back by the number that they just gave us. It's even better if the seller goes, hey, are you still there? That means we had a nice, good pause. I want you to count to 3 in your head at the very least. Hey, I want $160,000 for this house. Make a surprised face on your face. $160,000? Let them talk again. Now they're going to be like, wait, why did he just repeat it like that to me? I just want to point out here that budget doesn't have to be just a price. Budget can be something else. It could be that they need to sell this thing in 2 weeks and they're under the gun for whatever reason. It could be that they need some help moving cars off the lot. They don't know how to get these cars. This is where we're going back to the motivation. That motivation plays into the budget step. What's really going on here? How can we create a win-win scenario where they're going to be able to sell us this property at a discount? Here's some great questions that we can use in the budget compartment to really pull out a number from the seller. Remember, sellers, for the most part, are going to be a little bit savvy nowadays. They don't want to give you a number first. It's up to us to kind of control the situation and get a number out of them. Imagine I had a magic wand and I was able to wave this magic wand, and in a perfect scenario, in a perfect world, you would get exactly what you were asking for this property. What is that number you're looking for? I like to kind of switch this too. Like imagine I waved a magic wand and I brought a briefcase full of cash to the closing table with you. What amount of cash is in that briefcase? They might say, holy moly, you're going to pay me in cash? No, 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 I'm not going to pay you in cash. I'm just trying to wrap my head around this number. A lot of sellers are going to ask you when you get to this compartment, well, just make me an offer. What's your offer? Some might say it right off the bat. Hey, I'm calling about 123 Main Street. Oh, yeah, yeah. What's your offer? Oh, man, here is a fantastic way that I've found to kind of navigate that because it answers their question without answering their question. Mr. Seller, I know you want to hear an offer, and let me take a step back here. You may have heard, hey, what's your offer? And you've kind of skirted this issue up until now. I don't really know what an offer is yet. I don't know the whole situation. I'm in the bonding and rapport. I had somebody talk to me last week. They asked for an offer, and it was right at the number that we were talking about. But I didn't know that until I talked to them about these other things that we're going to talk about in a minute. So maybe you've skirted this issue up until now. Mr. Seller, John, I know that you're looking for an offer here. I don't make offers to people. I buy houses. The way I buy houses is I do my best to come up to a number that makes sense for them. If I make you an offer, more than likely, it's going to be a number that's going to be unappealing to you. It's going to be a lowball offer like you've been hearing from all these other knuckleheads. Look at that call back right here. I'm calling back to what are these other lowball offers you've been getting from knuckleheads? All me making an offer, a lowball offer to you does is ruin the relationship that we've built up over the last 10, 15 minutes, and it ruins my chance at buying a property. Like I said at the top of this, I want to buy your house. That's what I do. That's how I put food on the table. If I make you a lowball offer, you're going to want to hang up the phone on me, and I lose the opportunity to feed my family. I know that you probably have a number in your head that is going to work for you to sell this house and is going to get excited for you to sell this house. If I can come up to that number, let's get some paperwork going and get this process moving. So what's that number, John? What is the number that's going to get you excited to move forward with us? That was a little long-winded, but you can read it right off the slide there and it'll work great. Read this thing. All these questions that you've seen here so far, I want to go to this. It's like all these questions that you've seen here so far, read them, practice the inflection on them, read them in front of the mirror, read them into your phone, record yourself, listen to yourself. Is that something that would land, that you think would land well? You can read it very scripted. If I don't buy houses, Mr. Seller, or I don't make offers, I buy houses. If I make you an offer that you don't like, all it does is ruin our relationship and my chance to buy it from you. You have a number that works for you. So let's see if that can work for us. How droll and terrible that is. But John, I don't really make offers. I buy houses. I don't buy houses by making lowball offers. And if I make a lowball offer to you, all it does is ruin our relationship. All it does is ruin my chance to buy your house. And I want to buy your house, John, if we're a good fit. I know that you've got a number in your head that makes sense. You've been talking to other people and you've been telling them no. Otherwise, we wouldn't be on this phone call together. What's that number, John? What's the number that's going to get you excited to sign the paperwork in the next step? Now that is a line that will land. Okay. Once we've done the budget step, let's move on to the decision phase. Hey, we've had a conversation to this point. The decision phase is where we're seeing where the seller is at. Are they ready to move forward into the fulfillment step, into the fulfillment compartment, or do they need a little massaging, a little extra finessing? Here's some great questions in the decision phase. How will you know that you've made the right decision when it comes to this property? You might say, how will you know that you've chosen to move forward with the right investor? Okay, this is bonding and rapport. That's why we say bonding and rapport kind of moves out through the whole cycle, because you might have found this out already, or you might find something out right now. They've already tried to sell this property to a wholesaler, and the wholesaler couldn't do their job. Okay, how do you know you made the right decision? If I can loop my partner in, and maybe my transaction coordinator, you might want to add your transaction coordinator here into this question. If I could loop these people in and everything looks good on our end, when would you like to move forward? Okay, timeline. We've probably already touched on timeline in the pain area. Let's touch on it again. When do you want to move forward? And a thing to point out here, remember, is if you've already kind of hammered something down and a question that you're seeing here in the decision phase would be redundant, don't ask that question. Let's use a little bit of our brains here. That's why we're not using a script. So if a question here that you're seeing is redundant, or if you talk to me and we've gone over some other questions and you've already covered this question, don't ask it again. They're going to go, dude, I already answered that, and you've lost a little bit of your bond and your rapport with them. John, I've had a great conversation with you at this point. I'm a professional here. I do this a lot. I do this all day. One thing that I am not a big fan of is wishy-washy. I love yeses. It means I'm buying a house. I like no's because I know where I stand, but maybes I just cannot handle. Would you agree to just give it to me straight and tell me where we're at? Is this something you want to move forward with, or is it not? Let's get a yes or a no. We want yeses, we want no's. Yeses mean I'm buying a house. No's mean I'm following up with them and I'm moving on to the next call. Once we've handled the decision phase, we're moving on to fulfillment. Let's close this thing up. Let's get a contract signed. Speaking of contracts, let's not ever use the word contract. We want to use paperwork, agreement, those two. We want to get the paperwork signed. We want to get the agreement spun up, right? We don't want contracts sound very formal, very like somebody's being sold. We want to sign some paperwork. We want to sign an agreement. We want to get this thing done through our transaction coordinator. If we've gotten to a point where they're ready to make a decision, they're ready to move forward, here's fulfillment. Here's some questions that you're going to ask if we're feeling like they're ready to be asked this. What if I told my partner that, let's just say they asked 180. What if I told my partner we needed to come up to 165 to get this thing done? Would that get you excited? Would that get you ready to move forward? Okay. Where does that leave us, John? What are you wanting to do here? And then if they're just like really ready to go, if you've negotiated, if they got a number and you've kind of played the game and played it soft with them, John, let's get this paperwork signed and go get some Red Lobster. That's just a fun one to throw in there at the end. Okay, an important thing here that a lot of people screw up, and I've done that. I'm included in a lot of people, is the post sell. We've got paperwork signed already. Okay, or even we don't have the paperwork signed, but we're about to get it signed. We want to make sure we hammer this thing home. Okay, we don't want the seller to get seller's remorse. There's things called buyer's remorse because they're selling a house. This is seller's remorse. We don't want this to happen after they've signed the agreement. We don't want them to sleep on this thing, wake up in the morning and go, what the heck did I just do? I got to call Nathaniel and tell him I want out. Or even worse, somebody calls tomorrow and offers them $50 more and they go, oh, I'll take the $50 more. $50 is probably being a little ridiculous, but let's just say 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000. Okay. Even that, if that other investor doesn't know what the heck they're doing and they're not actually able to pay $10,000 more, that seller is going to hear $10,000 more in their pocket. If you haven't done your job here in the post-close section, they're going to call you tomorrow and say, I changed my mind. They're going to want to cancel. The post-sell is not about asking questions so much as it is kind of training your seller to fend off those wolves that are going to be calling. So this is one you should say every single time you sign an agreement. John, congratulations. Congratulations, dude. You've taken the first step to selling this property and getting whatever problems you're solving off of your plate. Just because we have signed this paperwork, though, it's not going to stop other people from calling you asking about this property. As a matter of fact, people are still going to probably keep calling you for 3 to 6 months after you've sold it. That's how long it takes for the data kind of to run its course. So because you have signed this agreement with us, just because you have signed this agreement with us doesn't mean that people are going to stop telling you. What I want to know, John, is when somebody calls and say, hey, I'm calling about 123 Main Street, what are you going to tell them? They might say, I'm going to tell them I already sold this property. Awesome, John. That is exactly what you should be telling them because you have already sold this property. Let's ingrain that in their head. They've already sold the property. They might go, I don't know. What the heck should I tell them? Like, this is what I always like to sell a seller because as somebody who's calling a seller and they're saying, hey, I've already sold it. When did you sell it? That's my next. Hey, I already sold that property. Oh man, when did you sell that thing? How much did you get for it? They might not tell you how much you got for it, but I'm going to ask. So when somebody says, "Hey, what should I tell them?" Here's what you should tell them, John. Hey, I appreciate your call. I already sold. I'm in the process of selling 123 Main Street. I'm supposed to close on this date. Because if some reason something happens and we're not able to buy your property, I want you to sell this property. So if they're good at what they're doing, they're going to call you the day of or the day after that you're supposed to sell it to check on it. So this is just, again, building, bonding and rapporting with the seller. Like, I'm on their side. I want them to sell this property. So if for some reason I'm not able to buy your property on March 16th, I want that guy who you just told I'm selling my property on March 16th to call you on March 17th asking if you actually sold it. Okay. Oh, John, I want to make sure that you don't sleep on this and you wake up in the morning and you regret your decision for selling the property to me. Just in case we missed anything, is there anything that we haven't covered before we part ways for right now? Let's give them a chance to wrap things up. Let's give them a chance to say, "Oh yeah, I forgot. We got to talk to my wife about this." All right. This is before you've signed, and that's if I got to talk to my wife about this problem. But even after you've signed, let's see if there's anything else that we can talk about that may come up during the escrow process. Okay. Oh my gosh, I forgot there's a lien on the property. Oh, we might have to find some stuff out. Okay. So this is a 7-step process to taking control of your sales process. This is allowing you to keep control of the conversation and keeping the questions in your court. There are ways to answer questions with questions, which is called reversing. That is a subject for another day. Let's start to master this Sandler Submarine, the 7-step sales process. Get really good at that before we move on to the next higher level ninja jiu-jitsu kind of stuff. If you found any value in this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, leave a comment below with what the biggest takeaway you had was here, because there were a lot of little pieces in here. If you're interested in learning more, follow along. Like I said at the beginning here, I do have a weekly Zoom that I hold called Helping Hands Hour. If that's something you're interested in, DM me, reach out, leave a comment on this video so I can get you the link. Happy buying.